The Toronto Raptors have been in all sorts of trade rumor situations lately. There's been some about Fred Vanvleet, some even saying that Gary Trent Jr. isn't a part of the Raptors' future, and one by Zach Lowe stating that a rival executives are closely monitoring the Raptors' situation. So I'm going to be breaking all of that fun stuff for you guys in today's video. So if you're ready to watch, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel, and the shout out for today's video goes out to BQ. So BQ, thank you so much for supporting this channel. To your likes and comments, it is very much appreciated. Now let's break down the first rumor, and this was by Zach Lowe, stating that NBA trade rumors, rival executives watching the Raptors closely if struggle continues. Now, this article went on to state that if the Raptors hover around the 500 mark in another month or two before the NBA trade deadline, could rival executives see the Raptors moving guys like Pascal, OG, Fred, and maybe even Scotty Barnes? Now, first thing I want to state regarding this is when you think about Masai Ujiri, ever since he's taken over the Toronto Raptors, he has never really gotten to strip down this team and start a full rebuild. He did that. He tried to do that anyways when he traded away Rudy Gay. And then he was actually very close to dealing Kyle Lowry to the New York Knicks. We know what happened. That deal didn't go through. And the rest is history because the Raptors went on to win a championship several years later. And even though the Raptors did move on from a lot of parts from the championship roster, there are still few remaining parts. So you really have to question, would Masai Ujiri take this opportunity to fully tear down this roster and actually do it? Now, I don't think that he will, just because when you take a look at how this roster is constructed, I know it says 6'9" vision going, but some of the guys like Pascal, OG, and Anunoby, they're really hard to find, guys. I know it's easy to suggest, why don't we move on from Pascal? Why don't we treat some of the other guys? Think about how many players in the last 5-6 years. Again, I'm not going to say every player because some of the top picks do, but think of what Pascal Siakam is able to do for you in terms of offensively, defensively, and given his size, he's able to ball handle. He can pass the ball. He can defend. I know he's not the greatest shot blocker, but he can get some block shots as well as hit some three-point shots as well. So when you think about those combination of skills and what Pascal Siakam has, and he's in his prime. He's 28 years old. Sure, you can trade him for 3 first-round picks, but the chances of you actually finding someone like him, even in the next 3 first-round drafts, is not very often. It's very rare to actually find these guys. Again, I want you guys to go through some of the drafts, the previous draft. Look at the top 15 guys. I know there's Zion. Obviously, there's going to be a couple of, superstar talents. But when you really think about how many players have the same unique skill set as Pascal, I just don't see it. I can see the Raptors truly retooling around Pascal and some of the other guys like OG. And I obviously don't see them moving Scotty Barnes, but I just don't see it. Obviously, some moves may be made like Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr., and that's exactly what we're going to be discussing. Moving on to our next trade rumor here. Now, this next trade rumor, I know a lot of people may not like this because of how Gary Trent Jr. has been playing, but this was being reported that there could also make smaller deals, talking about the Raptors, of course, to improve, probably around Gary Trent Jr. I don't think they want to keep Trent, one source said, suggesting he's the player they shop at the trade deadline. Trent is earning $17.5 million with an $18.8 million option for 2023-2024. And the source is Eric Pincus from Bleachers Report. So yes, it is Bleachers Report. Take it with a grain of salt. But I've always stated this in the past. And the reason I state this, I was actually talking to my good friend about this, talking about Gary Trent Jr. and talking about the Raptors. Why do you think it is that the Raptors, when they did trade for Gary Trent Jr., why do you think it is that they only signed him to a 2+1 deal? That's not like Masai Ujiri to sign an intriguing young player like Gary Trent Jr. to such a short contract. I think there's a mutual agreement there. Again, I'm not just making this stuff up, guys, because Masai Ujiri, ever since Gary Trent Jr. has been on this team, he has had press conferences that are an hour long. He has yet to mention Gary Trent Jr. once as part of this team. So what does that tell you? There's a reason why the Raptors and Gary Trent agreed to such a short contract. The Raptors obviously wanted him to improve so they can raise his trade value, and Gary Trent wanted a smaller contract so he can get a bigger payday. Now, taking a look, obviously, at some of the deals that the other guys around the NBA are getting, again, example, Tyler Hero. Now, I'm not going to compare the two players because they're completely different, but you look at some of the money that's been thrown around with a lot of players similar to Gary Trent Jr.'s skill set. I don't know. Do you really want to sign Gary Trent Jr. to $25, $27, $28 million in the offseason, considering that his strongest strength of his game is scoring? And with all due respect to Gary Trent Jr., I know he gets steals, but there's not really much else that he adds to the Toronto Raptors in terms of skill sets. He's not a great defender. He's not a rebounder. He's not a passer. So, I mean, you really have to question, right? Like, if Gary Trent Jr.'s shot isn't falling, what else is there in terms of his game that he can provide for the Raptors? I don't know. I know people are going to go off of his age and say he's still very young. He's 23. He can improve. And I don't doubt that he can improve, guys. But just in terms of skill sets and just the way the roster is constructed, again, they need shooting. I wouldn't just trade Gary Trent Jr. for the sake of trading him. I think you'd really need to focus on what you could get back in Gary Trent Jr. that could potentially be better than Gary Trent Jr. Again, it doesn't make sense to trade a 23-year-old that's averaging the same numbers as Gary Trent Jr. in terms of shooting, in terms of points per game. Obviously, the Raptors' offense is terrible this year. So I wouldn't just trade Gary Trent Jr. just for the sake of trading him. I think obviously that's not a type of deal that Masai does anyways. But if you're getting a first-round pick back, if you're getting some pieces that maybe fit better, if you're getting a center back, a starting center, which the Raptors desperately need, then I would do it. So again, I know people feel some sort of way about maybe moving Gary Trent Jr. I just don't think it's worth paying someone whose main asset is scoring and shooting. And if that's not falling, there's not much else to his game. So I don't think he's worth $25 million, which is why I think the Raptors will move on from him. He's also with Clutch Sports, which again, I've highlighted this in the past. They're a shady agency, man. I know Anunoby's with them as well, but I don't know. I really don't know about that agency. And Gary Trent Jr., with all due respect, I know he's got a great personality. He's supportive of his teammates, but when you look at his personality, he's more of a LA type of lifestyle. He's that kind of guy who's obviously going to get paid this summer. So if the Raptors don't do it, you essentially risk losing him for nothing. I just think the Raptors could move from him. And I definitely see the Raptors looking to trade for him come trade deadline or even before that. So again, we'll see what happens. Moving on to our last trade rumor here. This is one that a lot of Raptors fans have been stating, which is moving from Fred Vanvleet because of his recent struggles. Now, this was stating that the NBA trade rumors, Magic interested in Raptors guard Fred Vanvleet. Toronto Raptors guard is the subject of trade rumors. Could the Orlando Magic make a move? Now, again, this was being reported by Bleachers Report, so take it with a grain of salt. I just don't believe this one as much as I believe the Gary Trent one for the obvious reasons I have stated. But now, the reason I see this, guys, I know Fred VanVleet is struggling. I'd be the first to admit I supported him. I can't justify some of his shot selection, but moving Fred VanVleet when his value is at an all-time low makes no sense at all. I know people believe that he's going to get $100+ million. He's going to get $30 million in the offseason. There's no way he's going to. Because I remember the last time Fred VanVleet was a free agent, people were stating that he's going to get paid $25 million. And then he got paid 18 and everyone was celebrating because we got him for such a cheap deal. So I don't see him getting $30 million. I don't know where these rumors come from. Again, I know there's all sorts of reports out there that he may want this, he may want that. I don't believe it for 1 second. And stop for a second, guys. Like the rumor was actually that a lot of rebuilding teams will look to trade for Fred VanVleet. Why? Why would the Orlando Magic want him? He's an expiring contract. Do you think even forget the fact that he all the rumors we've been hearing about $30 million, whatever he's going to get paid, $28-29 million. Do you think the Magic will even pay a rebuilding team? Will they want to pay a veteran who's going into his late 20s, $30 million or even $25 million? I don't think so. It makes no sense for the Magic. And the trade proposal, again, the trade proposal they had was the Raptors receiving Cole Anthony, Mo Bamba, and also Gary Harris as well. So I don't know about that, guys. Like I know Fred VanVleet's value is at an all-time low. You can definitely get better assets back. I don't think that's a good deal for the Raptors. And again, I went through the NBA trade machine, guys. You can do it yourselves. When you think about starting point guards that teams out there are looking for, there's not very many teams. So even if you do look to trade for Fred VanVleet, again, I'll leave it up to Masai Ujiri. I think keeping Fred on this team makes a lot of sense, because it's not as easy as just trading him. Think about how many players actually want to play for the Toronto Raptors. It's easy to suggest trades, and it's easy to say, why don't we move this guy? Why don't we move that guy? But I know Fred VanVleet is a much better player than he's showing right now. He's struggling. Yes, his shot selection is questionable. Yes, he needs to pass better. Absolutely. But to move him right now would absolutely make no sense. It really wouldn't. It doesn't, unless you're getting a really much better player significantly back, which again, it's hard to see that happening right now. I just don't see it. I think it doesn't make sense to move Fred VanVleet for several reasons, man. Like you see what you want about Fred. He's a winner. He's done it at the highest level. And I know people are going to talk about his injuries, and this is one I want to actually address, because people keep saying, well, guys with the injuries, Kemba Walker, Isaiah Thomas. One thing you've got to realize, Kemba Walker, Isaiah Thomas, go watch them play. They're actually really fast guards, which is why they got injured. Hip injuries, knee issues, whatever. They had several injuries. Fred VanVleet is not a fast guard. So he's naturally, when you think about this, stop and think for this. And I want to mention Kemba and IT again. They're really quick guards who can move well. Fred isn't the fastest player. And think about point guards into their 30s. Again, we're going to go over 32, 33. I can't really think of guards that are really fast that are playing plus, 33, 34 age. I really can't. Kyle Lowry, Chris Paul, they're both slow players. They're not the fastest players. So again, I don't see this comparison of how that makes sense to IT and Kemba. Their style of play is different. As also, like I said, Fred VanVleet is slow as hell. So I don't see how those injury comparisons make sense. Again, I think Fred VanVleet is a really good player you need on your team if you're contending for a championship. If the Raptors do decide to retool or rebuild, then it makes sense to trade him. But like I said, I don't think you should trade him for several reasons. There's not really a point guard. I know people are going to say Scotty Barnes at the point guard position. Guys, I just don't see it. I don't see Scotty Barnes as a point guard. I know he's played that in college. He's a point forward. He's like Pascal Siakam. You can't play him at the point guard position the entire season. And I really mean this. No disrespect to Scotty Barnes. I just don't see it. So who are you replacing him with? You're trading Fred VanVleet, but who are you getting back? Like, go through the list of teams across the NBA that would want to trade for Fred VanVleet, that need a point guard. Not very many. So again, who are you replacing with? There's no really definitive answer. And even if you do put Scotty Barnes there, like, who do you have around him? Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby shooters. And then you have Pascal, who's a decent three-point shooter, but he's not known for that. And then essentially, if you put Scotty Barnes at point guard, you need a center that's able to stretch the floor for you. So again, it's not as easy as just replacing Fred VanVleet. I know he's struggling, but find yourself a guard out there who can defend, who can shoot three-pointers. I know he's struggling, but it's not an easy solution. And given the fact that this free agency coming up this summer doesn't have a lot of depth in the point guard position, so look, man, see what you will about Fred VanVleet. There's not an easy replacement for him. That's all I'll say. I don't think it's the right move to trade him. I don't think a lot of teams will trade for him. And I don't think a lot of rebuilding teams will trade for him. It makes no sense. Why would a rebuilding team want Fred VanVleet when they're tanking for Victor Wembanyama? So again, these are just my opinions, guys. You don't have to agree with it. But let me know your thoughts down below, what you think of these trade rumors. And as always, I do have a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, of the players that have played at least 5 games, which Raptors player has the highest 2-point field goal percentage? Is it A, Pascal Siakam? Is it B, Khem Birch? Is it C, Chris Boucher? Is it D, Otto Porter Jr.? Or is it E, and I apologize because I've apparently been pronouncing his first name wrong, Juancho Hernan Gomez. I believe it's Juancho Hernan Gomez, guys. I apologize for my mispronunciations. I have one of the worst pronunciations ever. You guys know that. Well, whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. So thank you so much for watching this video. I do want to hear your thoughts on these trade rumors. I know people are going to disagree with my Fred take and possibly my Gary Trent Jr. take as well, but I'm very intrigued to hear what you guys think. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and that will be it for today's video. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.